Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's Friday, December 2nd. We've made it to the last month of the year, and 2022 is going to look good in the rearview mirror, I can say that much, at least for those of us who are in crypto. So this week, we've seen a little bit of a rally in the markets. Bitcoin up about 3%, Ether up about 7%, as basically the selling has reached the exhaustion level. As I've said before, I think we're in a bottoming process, and I'm not sure that there's a whole lot to say other than the fact that the story and the motivation for buying both Bitcoin, Ether, and quite a few other tokens really hasn't changed. What has changed is the capital dynamics. FTX was the home of probably most professional crypto investors who were trading and hedging, and many crypto hedge funds had their assets there, and now they don't. And I think that that will ultimately create buying pressure as money re-enters the market. And at this point, the forced selling has already happened. But as I've said before, expect the process to be a bottoming process. Crypto is still impacted by macro, and there's still belief that even though today's strong job report notwithstanding, there's still a belief that because of the inversion of the yield curves, the Fed is going to probably back off soon. All that might be true. But all that said, let's get on to the rant. And I have to say, sometimes when I see what's been happening, I think we're living in a simulation. Someone asked me whether I thought it was remotely possible if Sam Bankman-Fried was telling the truth in any of his interviews, that he didn't know where the money went. And my answer was simple. I said, I think it's easier to believe that Thanos snapped his fingers and changed the world, or that the Marvel movies, all of them, are documentaries, and we're living in the multiverse in some place. That will be easier. But here we are. The fact is, if you were a CEO of a company, the one thing you care about more than anything else is financial risk. And the one question he has not answered is he has not said how much money Alameda lost on Luna, how much money Alameda lost on GBTC, how much money Alameda lost taking directional bets on FTX or off FTX over the summer. How much they lost in investments that was thrown away, or how much was thrown away on basically spurious things like Super Bowl ads or conferences, etc. Nobody knows that financial accounting. The only thing we know is somehow FTX had 0 Bitcoin deposited, despite billions of it being deposited by clients, had 0 Ether, dollars, etc., and only had Sam's shitcoins, Serum, which is now worthless, and FTT, which is now worthless. And they were accepted without any haircut to their collateral. In no version of the world could this happen without some amount of theft, at a bare minimum, misappropriation of assets that were never intended or allowed to be used. Yet, in this simulation of a world we're in, the chairwoman of the House Financial Services Committee thanked him for being candid and said, yes, I'm glad that you said that you messed up. Well, no, that's not messing up. Messing up is when you let your own company go bankrupt, not when you take down hundreds of other firms, tens of thousands of hardworking people in this industry are either without a job or not knowing what their job will be because their companies depended upon a simple terms of service from FTX, that their money was there, and that a company big enough to have their name on stadiums, to take out Super Bowl ads, and to be plastered all over Forbes and Fortune magazine was not going to lose it in a day. But here we are. At this point, the only thing that matters is a true accounting. The only two questions that I care about are, where did the money go? Because if in point of fact it was lost on those things and stolen, then we need to know that. And frankly, the demand will come back in for that, and the theft needs to be punished. And the other question we need to know is, how did FTX's risk engine really work? We've been told that during the Bitcoin and Ether volatility of September, for example, that the risk engine meant that FTX took no risk, that they didn't have any risk from client defaults, that clients' losses were limited to their collateral, and that was it. Now, if that's true, which obviously we have no way of knowing it was true, in fact, probably it was a lie. I mean, who knows? Everything else was a lie. But if that were true, then that has huge implications for policy and huge implications on a better way to run derivative firms. But if it were false, we need to understand that too. Now, obviously, the risk engine didn't work because they turned it off for Alameda, which was the largest single source of risk on the exchange. But Alameda aside, it's still important. So those are things we need to know. If you're going to do Senate hearings and talking about policy, we need to understand what that policy should be focused on. I mean, there are obviously three things that matter. And number one with a bullet is the ability to protect customer assets. Note I said ability, because as far as I can tell, without some sort of legislation, there's no way for a crypto firm, whether it's a custodian or an exchange, to ring fence customer assets such that in a bankruptcy, they get first priority. Now, maybe there is a way, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but making a regulatory framework for that makes sense. The second is to make sure that conflicts of interest are understood, fully disclosed, and there's somebody to make sure that if they aren't, that they'll be exposed and the perpetrators will be punished. Now, third is to understand regulatory clarity. We've still talked about that. The chair of the CFTC spoke to the Senate this week and made a persuasive case for why they should have regulation over spot crypto. Frankly, I am sympathetic. I don't really think it matters. As much as I despise the way the current SEC is doing rulemaking, at the end of the day, if one agency has responsibility, at least we'll get some clarity. The unfortunate thing, of course, would be if they tried to create clarity in a way that stopped innovation, most important of which is DeFi. Now, just before I finish, I want to be very clear what I mean by DeFi. I am not talking about necessarily yield farming. In fact, I don't think that is what I'm talking about at all. I'm not even talking about the AMM model that is used in most DeFi protocols. But what I am talking about is separation between an order book or the ability to trade and custody, and allowing self-custody natively. There's no real need with crypto for centralized custodians, but there is a demand for centralized custodians. Many people don't want to self-custody, others do. Why shouldn't there be a marketplace that can have self-custodied assets interacting with other people's custodied assets, interacting with other people's different custodians? That's the way it should work, because the technology allows it on the blockchain. At a minimum, if an exchange is going to be custodial, they need to make sure that that custody is separate from other operations on the exchange. Now, I could rant about this forever, but I'm going to cut it off with a thought. We will see what happens in the next round of hearings that goes on. We'll hear if any more news comes out. But at the end of the day, the most important thing to understand is this. Many, and I mean many, crypto market makers have been wounded or put out of business. Many crypto funds have been wounded or put out of business. But the underlying assets, Bitcoin, Ether, Polygon, many others, Polkadot, doesn't matter, other layer ones, the NFT demand, Web3 in terms of what it can do, none of those things have changed. What has changed is confidence in the market to trade it. And frankly, confidence in the market to trade it is exactly what we're in the business of trying to help with. And there are many others that are in that business as well. And so we care about this deeply. So I'll cut it off there. Have a great weekend, everybody.